Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Hockey Journey Podcast, episode number 82, the Murray Williamson Hockey Journey, presented to you by onlinehockeytraining.com. I'm your host, Coach Lance Pedlick. If you're new here, please make sure you subscribe so you won't miss out on any future episodes. Before we take the skate guards off the blades, head out for a little shinny and begin this conversation. If you want to learn more about me, my hockey experiences, that I have the world's largest database of off-ice stick handling, passing, and hockey shooting drills, what I know, and most importantly, how I've been helping hockey players get really good with a stick and puck, just head on over to onlinehockeytraining.com, that's onlinehockeytraining.com, and gain instant access to my 10-part video series where I'll show you everything. Consider it my gift to you. Lastly, if you live in Minnesota or are visiting the state of hockey sometime soon and you want to schedule an in-person off-ice stick skills lesson, I'd love to have the opportunity to show you my little world. Go to sweethockeycoach.com, that's sweethockeycoach.com, and watch the video on the homepage for instructions. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you sometime soon. Little did I know that in the fall of my second season at the University of Minnesota back in 1987, the team welcomed a transfer from the University of Denver by the name of Dean Williamson. I didn't pay much attention to the guy when I heard the news. Since he was a forward, I didn't have to worry about fighting for ice time with him possibly down the road, so we got along great right from the start and ended up becoming roommates that sophomore campaign. Fast forward 35 years to today, it's early January of 2023, and guess who I'm interviewing? My former Gopher roommate all those years ago. It's his dad, Murray Williamson, and until recently, like within the last year, I had absolutely no idea the hockey journey this guy had, the influence he and this underground band of hockey gypsies had on the development of the game in those early years, not just locally, but nationally and internationally. Though Murray Williamson was a very talented hockey player, his biggest long-term gift to hockey was rubbing elbows with the right people during and after his playing days, helping envision and grow the game to what it is today. The full story is a great read in a newly launched book called The Road to Respectability: Murray Williamson's Role in USA Hockey by John Schladler with Murray Williamson. It's an amazing hockey journey, and I can't tell you how much I enjoyed reading it, but more importantly, I'm grateful the stories were captured, documented, and now available for everyone to treasure as well. Let me do a little rapid fire and give you a few quick snippets from Mr. Murray Williamson's hockey resume. Was teammates with Herb Brooks at the University of Minnesota, and the squad was coached by John Mariucci. Was an All-American his senior year and named the Gophers MVP that season. Became the U.S. Olympic hockey coach 2 or 3 times, I think. Was part of a small group of people that really shaped U.S. amateur, junior, college, and Olympic hockey as it's seen today. In 2001, he was named one of the 50 most significant players and coaches in Minnesota hockey history. And we got him here today on the Hockey Journey Podcast. I've talked enough, and it's time to get this party started. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Murray Williamson to the show. Mr. Williamson, welcome to the Hockey Journey Podcast.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm not familiar with podcasts, but we're going to give it a good shot. I hope I can inform your people and to the point where they may want run out and buy the book.
And we're going to cover that. The book, I didn't get to it in the introduction, but it is called The Road to Respectability. And I know that I connected with it a lot because there are so many familiar names and faces that are attached to Minnesota hockey. But you were one of the people that no one really heard about. And when I read this book, Murray, I couldn't believe the experiences and what you've amassed over those years and how impactful you and a small group of people had on the growth of hockey. So first, let's start by, how did the book idea first become something that showed up on the radar? Was it your idea, or was it John Schlater, am I pronouncing it correctly, that approached you first?
John approached me and he wanted to do a book on me. And I said, I'm really not interested in doing a book on myself. But if it's a book about all the people that helped and supported Herbie Brooks and myself in our endeavors in pursuit of Olympic medals, I'd be willing to do that. But again, it's one that's about those people that we've stood up there and got accolades, especially Herbie. But the people behind the scenes who made it all happen, that's who we wanted to include in any book that's being written. And John Schlater is a wonderful writer, did a great job. And it took him about a year to put everything together. He researched everything. He even had John F. Kennedy on audio, which I heard, talking to his aide and saying, what the hell went on over there? The U.S. just got beat by Sweden 17-2. And his quote was, Hackett was his aide, said, what's going on? And he said, did we send a bunch of girls over there? And John Schlater said, should we edit that? I said, hell no, you don't edit out the President of the United States. So and it proceeded from there. And that was I'm in there a little bit, but more than I care to be. I'd rather have all those stories that reflect on the success and ventures of all the players that played for me.
So talk a little bit about your childhood, as we're going to get to the book later on. There's so much information. We're never going to cover all of it. We'd be talking for a year. But grew up in Canada, wanted to be a Montreal Canadian, and somehow you found yourself in Eveleth, Minnesota. If you backtrack your hockey journey, do you think that's ground zero for you when you met legendary coach John Mariucci for the first time?
That was, yeah, I would say that. Most of my neighborhood buddies were off to college scholarships, Michigan State and Michigan, and a couple of situations in Denver. So that was an incentive for me to pursue college hockey. And we went down, I played for the junior St. Boniface Canadiens, went down and played the University of Minnesota. Scared the hell out of us when we heard about Ken Yackel and Mayasich and Doherty and Anderson and what have you. And before 4,000 screaming fans there in Mariucci, Williams Arena at the time. And we wound up sweeping them. And
wow,
we swept them, 2-game series. And Mariucci then, the legendary coach, said, that's the best junior team I've ever seen. And I kind of chuckled because John never went north of Eveleth, Minnesota to see a junior team. He never ever seen one.
Yeah.
And that piqued my interest. And especially Minnesota, that caught my eye. And when the offer came from John to pursue opportunities there at Minnesota, I jumped on it and shifted Michigan and Michigan State to the back burner.
So you went to play for the Gophers under John Mariucci in 1959 or 57 through 59. Became an All-American your senior year. What did college hockey look like back then? Because obviously it wasn't. There wasn't as many opportunities as there are today. Was there a professional hockey opportunity available to many college players after they were finished? And did the coaching bugs start with hitting you in college, having conversations with Mr. Mariucci and Herb Brooks, or did all that happen after you left?
Well, there was quite a few players came out of college hockey, Red Hay and Berenson and some of those that were in that era. But college hockey in those days was a little different. There was Wally Maxwell, a neighborhood kid, went to Michigan, but he went to Michigan after he'd already played 3 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That didn't bother Vic Heiliger. And that was college hockey at that era. It was wide open. At North Dakota, Ed Novak, I think his first name was Ed, was a car salesman in Winnipeg. He'd come down on weekends and play for the Fighting Sioux. So college hockey in those days was very, very wide open and very unregulated.
Were there any scholarships, or how did that go?
Oh, there's scholarships all over the place. That was the key to it. Scholarships and side jobs, and I had a job working at WCCO. You just check in and get a check and go watch the movie in the adjoining studio. There was scholarships aplenty back in those days, and easy to get.
Yeah. But again, like you said, it was unregulated, and I'm sure that was even worse at the professional ranks.
They were trying to build college hockey, and Mariucci he was pro Minnesota boys, but he also understood that he needed some of the Canadian players like Berenson and those people to raise the standards of the game. And I think Michigan was 90% Canadian at the time.
So what was it like? Because we're all have watched Miracle on Ice. You played with Herb Brooks. You were learning under Mariucci. Did that already start? Could you see that the chemistry between the three of you and what was going on was going to be something special years later? Like you were all playing on the same piano really early on, but very different ages compared to Mariucci.
We bonded under Mariucci because he allowed the players the freedom to express themselves on the ice. That bond came later, after college, because in college Herbie lived at home for all those years, and I lived in the dorm in Pioneer Hall, so we didn't see much of each other than on the ice. And then after we graduated, we went on and played for the Steers and the USHL. That's when we became closer.
So when exactly, because that's right around the same time when you started getting into coaching, right? At the international level?
I was up in Canada. Yeah, I was up in Canada and playing in the Ontario Senior League, and as working for International Milling on a big management training program. And Walter Bush contacted me and said, "Why don't you come on back down? And we're starting a team in the United States Hockey League, and we'd love to have you come down and play and coach." And I jumped on that. I wanted to get back to Minneapolis. My wife and child were, that was home for them.
So you finished college and you're playing at then what was the USHL, which is what, minor league pro league, right?
That's
working,
correct. Yep.
Have a young family. I mean, it is nothing like what hockey is today. I mean, that's crazy. How did you do it?
Well, it was, we loved the game, and we had some great players, Billy Masterton and Georgie Connick, and these were all legendary All-American players, and pros eventually, but there were no real opportunities in the National Hockey League for guys that had degrees and could make more money in the business world than they could playing hockey. That was the case of Connick and Masterton, and actually Nanny was part of that group too, I guess.
Well, you mentioned a number of people. We've both been. When I read this list of names to you, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Ken Austin, John Blanick, Herb Brooks, Harry Brown, Walter Brown, Warren Brown, Walter Bush, Don Clark, Bob Fleming, Vic Heiliger. You mentioned John F. Kennedy, Tom Lockhart, Gordon Martin, Cal Marvin, John Mariucci, John Mayasich, Doc Nagabogs, Lou Nanny, Bob Peters, Bob Ritter, Glenn Sonmore, Anatoly Tarasov, Hal Trumbull, Thayer Tutt. Because if I mention any of those people who are crazy famous in the hockey worlds, you're entwined with each and every one of them. You guys were the hockey pioneering spider web. So when did that all kind of come into being, or did it just kind of evolved and you really didn't notice it until the book, The Road to Respectability, was put together?
I think that's true. Those people that we mentioned, Bob Fleming was the most selfless, considerate leader. He was steady as you go. Now he had Herbie Brooks was his coach in the Olympic team, and Fleming was, and they had me during a couple of years. I mean, for those two to supervise Williamson and Brooks and keep the headlights between the ditches was none of that stuff would ever happen without him.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's got in the Hall of Fame as part of that 780 team. And I would lobbied for him to be as an individual in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And they said, well, that we weren't political enough. And he was the most unpolitical person. He cared about his teams, and he kept the headlights between the ditches. And to supervise two characters like Williamson and Brooks, that took a handful. And there would have been no gold medal or silver medal or return to respectability without Bob Fleming.
Yeah. And
he gave credit to everybody but himself.
Right. So when did it happen to where you said, I'm done as a player, and I'm going into this coaching and to really try to build the U.S. international program to where it was when you started getting involved in it?
Well, we played and coached for the St. Paul Steers. We won a roster of 8 or 9 people, and Walter moved on to a team in the Central Pro League and turned the team over to me. Actually sold it to him. He never got paid, and we barnstormed the country. And it came time to schedule exhibition games with the Swedish team that was touring. We beat them, and I think that's documented. We tied a Russian traveling team, and we gave Kenny Yackel's national team all they could handle. I mean, and they came to me and said, we need your players. And I said, you can't have my players. We got commitments at Denver University, North Dakota, Michigan, all over the place. So they said, well, why don't you be the national team then? I said, that's interesting. Where's the World Championships? In Vienna, Austria. I said, oh, boy, that's even more interesting. Yeah. I think we'll do that. So, and we were very successful. We probably the best showing since the 60 gold medal that McCartan won. So that was the beginning of the road to respectability. There was ups and downs, many of them, but that was basically the start of it all.
So you basically had a team and they did really well. You got noticed and they couldn't beat you. So they're like, let's get him on board and give him the reins to the city. And that's how it all started.
That's how it all started.
Holy cow. So,
And I was a naturalized American. I wanted to play in the national world championships, so I had to get my citizenship. And it wasn't well received that a Canadian was coaching the national team, Olympic teams. And they came to me. Bob Fleming came to me, and he said, there's a lot of people that want to apply for that job. And I said, well, that's fine. Give it to them, because I don't interview for a job that on a team that I've built.
right.
And he said, okay, we'll go with you. That's the way it is. And I said, that's fine. But it came to the Olympic year, a year later, the politics got involved, and we had to. They wanted Mariucci as the coach, and I'd be the GM, and that was a disaster. And my mentor and great friend Marush was having lots of personal problems, so it didn't work out very well. But we got the boat turned around. We got the boat turned around. Yeah, it took some behind the scenes maneuvering on my part to get that changed. And John, such a graceful guy, he said, "What are you doing, Murray? I know what your problems are. We're doing bad, and you're going to make a change." He said, "Go ahead, make the change. I'm with you all the way." So that was it. I took over as coaching, and we got the ship righted and back on track. And Marush was there every bit of the way, supporting, and I think they gave him a job for the North Stars, and Ren Blair didn't treat him very well, and I really resented that.
Yeah. Interesting. It's funny how relationships change over time, because a lot of it happens because of the politics of hockey, because someone has to abide by the rules from someone that's higher up, and it affects relationships down the ladder. That's tough. So one of the people on the list that I read is Anatoly Tarasov, and I'd like you to chat about your relationship with him over the years. But first, let me set up this section. Back when I started coaching in the early 2000s, one of the books I came across was called The Hockey Handbook, which was written by a guy named Lloyd Percival. And basically, he was Canadian. He wrote a book in 1951 to help improve the game of hockey up in Canada, and basically was laughed off the stage, so to speak, by the decision makers at the time. The book finds its way over to Russia and into the hands of Tarasov, and apparently that was one of the major reasons and births of the Soviet national program. And you got to hang out with them. Once he learned everything and trained and they became big and famous, you somehow got to go over there and hang with them, and he shared basically everything with you, didn't he?
He was an unbelievable person. Ace Percival's book was his Bible. That's where he got it started. He adopted a lot of those things, and you're right. The people in Canada laughed at him. He's using Ace Percival's book to build a Russian team. Well, he built a dynasty, and his big goal, and we spent quite a bit of time together. His goal was, first of all, to go to a National Football League training camp when Bud Grant was running the Vikings, and was to play a game against any team in the National Hockey League that he said we would beat. And I couldn't I couldn't pull either one of them off, but they did happen. Well, we didn't get to the Viking training camp, but he saw a lot of their training habits, and he used those.
Well,
he thought out of the box. There was no he was an amazing man, and he was so into his partners that it cost him his job. He came to me in 1972. He said, Williams, I'm general without an army, because they fired him because he wasn't political enough. And it cost him the 1980 gold medal.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's the way it was. He loved his players. And Tikhonov, that took over, thought his players were just robots. But Tarasov loved his players, and they loved him.
A quick word from our sponsor, Sniper's Edge Hockey.
Sniper's Edge Hockey is your one-stop shop for your at-home hockey training needs on and off the ice. Find the perfect start to your at-home training area with slick tiles, synthetic ice, or a rink liner. Or upgrade your home setup with one of our top-quality training tools to help you work on soft hands, all of your dekes and dangles, perfect your one-timer, and improve the power and accuracy of your shot. Find it all online and in stock for immediate shipping at snipersedgehockey.com.
Yeah, there was some thing on Netflix that shows it's the opposite of the Miracle on Ice, but it goes into the history of the Red Army and the Russian hockey, and it was pretty cool to see. So, what do you think was your greatest takeaway from the early time you got to spend with him over in Russia?
What was the best takeaway? Just I learned from him, and on off dry land training and what it took to get a team conditioned. You didn't rest all day and play at night. You trained in the morning and played at night. 2 a day, and that was the key to it. And our team was so well conditioned when we broke camp in '72. Henry Boucher went to Detroit, scored a goal in the first 10 seconds. I think it was a record. And Tommy Miller, we got tangled up with Schultz and whipped his butt. And that was according to Ned Harkless, who coached Detroit at the time. We're so well conditioned. And Schultz didn't know what the hell he got tangled up with. Tommy Miller was not that big a guy, but he was well conditioned and tougher than hell. But
what I'm hoping to gain, like, you went over there, you saw something. So you're telling me that what you were seeing over there, it was non-existent in the U.S. and you introduced it to the training methods, and it sounds like you figured out that you could push players harder than you were currently pushing them.
That's correct, and he made it fun. I mean, they worked hard, and my players in '72, they had fun. They worked hard, extra hard, but I made it fun. It was fun for them. Not that I made it fun, but some of the people in that team, the chemistry got it going, and even to this day, they're communicating almost weekly. Miller, McGlynn, Robbie Fatorik, Marky Howe. That bond stayed forever because they worked hard, accomplished something, and that bond prevailed. But you never get any satisfaction unless you're working your buns off. Then what you accomplish something, you look back and say, hey, hard work really paid off. And that extra effort, and it was fun doing it. It was painful, but it was fun when you look back on it.
Yeah, a story that kind of pops into my head was when your son Dino and I were at the University of Minnesota, and back then the old football stadium was a Memorial Stadium. They had converted the football locker room into the hockey weight room for the hockey players, and I think the gymnasts used it too. But I remember, I think it was my freshman summer, Mike Ramsey, who played in the NHL, won an Olympic gold medal on the 80 team. He's riding the bike and he goes, you wanna have a workout with me? I'm like, sure. And I've never had a more challenging bike ride than that. But at that point in time, I had my level of what was the hardest I've ever worked. And he showed me there was a different level, and that benefited me. And you saw a different level when you saw how the Russians were training, and you passed it on. And that seemed to be kind of a staple with all the people like Herb Brooks, that came with you after Mariucci and Masic, that was kind of a staple, that all your teams were just really skilled, but they had a work ethic that was like no other.
No others, yep. The Russians came over. They got beat a couple of times, but they beat most of the pro teams. And and I was following up when they play the Buffalo Sabres beat them. Only because it wasn't a hockey game; it was a slug match, And that was some of the philosophies that we adopted. If you're going to compete with the Czechs, the Russians, you got to be very physical with them. But the only problem with being physical with the Russians, they were tougher than hell. They're in very good shape, and so you just had to hang on as best you could. That Summit Series was one when Bert Olmsted, who was one of the assistant coaches for Canada, and it was a very shameful act when he told Bobby Clark, if you want to win this series, you got to break Karmanov's leg, and he broke his ankle with a vicious slash, and that changed the series.
If you've never seen it, he should be in prison. There's people in prison doing less time for what you saw in that video.
It was brutal. Yeah. It wasn't. I mean, you can go and be physical and bounce around, but to injure the star player like that, that mentality doesn't function in today's game. If somebody did that in the National Hockey League right now, they'd be suspended for multi games.
Yeah, and when you were coaching, you get a little angry at the refs, and somehow all the extra sticks and out on the ice surface, you don't see that anymore either, because that's not the normal anymore. You got to stick. The officiating has improved so dramatically. A lot of people won't agree with that because they don't like officials, but it has, and it's cleaned up the game. I mean, to the point where almost there are too many penalties. Yeah, at all times. So let me ask you this, Murray, as we kind of move out of the international hockey here. Out of all your international USA hockey experiences, can you put one of them in the top spot?
Not well. When I watched the silver medal ceremony, and the coaches aren't on the ice. When I watched the boys, Mark Howe and Fatorik and Sheehy and Christensen get their medals, that was a highlight. I think the other we played Syracuse Stars, and we were working 2 a day and what have you. And people came down and said, "Wow, you got to come and see this team." We were moving pucks so fast and we kind of revolutionized the eyes of the people in Syracuse, New York. They'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So when you look back, it's hard to put anything at the top spot, because all of them have moments, and some of them are tough moments. I'm sure that there was some time where, you guys had some heartbreak, but then the next Olympics or tournament, you triumphed. And maybe it was because of that heartbreak that got you over the hump. I don't know,
I think of the cover of the book, I think it shows the Huffer Christensen, the greatest captain any Olympic team could ever have, receiving the silver medal with 16-year-old Mark Howe in the back row and Robbie Fatorik and 19-year-old. And they all went on to Hall of Famers. I think about that team, a lot of Hall of Famers, and jerseys are retired in their respective arenas, Boston College, Sheehy, Miller, Jimmy Lowe. Those are the highlights of my life. Seeing those successes, and I've kind of drifted on. I don't politic. I was the most unpolitical person ever to. I make Billy Martin look like a tame duck. So Herbie Brooks was smarter and a better politician. He could, he could get it done, and he was smooth. He was smart, very smart, and very, very, very focused. It was scary to go to dinner with him because you want to do X's and O's, and you like to rather tell stories.
That's so cool. So we've been bouncing around and not really getting too dialed in on any story, but again, the book is The Road to Respectability. Pick up a copy. It's such a great read. I find myself rereading a lot of the sections over again just because it's just a lot of knowledge to grasp. But when you look back at the moments when, Mayasitz, Mariucci, Herb Brooks, all these hockey minds here in Minnesota, you were one of the people that carried on their vision. Did the vision, after so many years, come to fruition? What you guys were talking about that back then, growing the game, did it happen the way you hoped?
So, the book is, there's a website that is my aide set up, Murray Williamson. I think I'll have to look it up.
I'll find it. We'll get it
and the book is on sale now for $25, and I think they cover the postage. Just a moment here. It's Murray-Williamson.com or BethGettingOrganizedNow.com. And the books, it's I think Jack Norquell, legendary hockey aficionado, ordered 2 books, and on that site, that was the last I saw. That was a couple of days ago. So anyway,
nice.
Those that are interested, it's not a disc for hockey people. I've had a lot of people comment on the entertainment of the book. The history and what have you. It's not just he shoots, he scores, and it's more about the people behind the scenes, the legends behind the teams.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a legend. I consider myself a very lucky guy. So,
I would say pioneer, and you were in the right place at the right time with the right mentality, where you were all about giving and growing, which was, and we're all the benefactors. I was, my kids were, and we're grateful for that. So one thing that you did, and I'm curious, for many years, is you had a hockey camp, summer camp up in northern Minnesota in Bemidji. How did that start? And was that part of something bigger than just a summer camp? Because a lot of the people that we mentioned earlier, the Ken Yackles, Herb Brookses, was this a way to grow the game nationally? Because it seemed like all of you had your own individual camps, and that the spider webbed, to Michigan, to Massachusetts, to New York. Was that talked about, or that just happened? That's just what was going on at the time.
That was up in Bemidji, Bob Peters, and the first year we called it the Olympic Development Hockey Camp. Well, they got a little gun shy on that name, because I wasn't. So we have to change it to the Bemidji International Hockey. Well, the first year, Paul Holmgren won a scholarship to it, his brother, and he mentions that many times of how that got him started. And there weren't that many people there, and it just grew. And over a period of years, 33,000 kids went through that camp.
Wow.
Speech of Eric Hayden was a prominent member. Billy Baker was there for 7 straight years. It was businesses grew. It was the first one in the country, in the world almost. We had 23 different states represented, and I think 5 European nations represented over a period of years. So yeah, we didn't talk very much about it. Peters and I were both more reserved, and we didn't run around blowing each other's horn. So,
no. So let me get this straight. You had more than just the camp up in Bemidji, Minnesota. You would have teams and go do camps and clinics worldwide?
No, we went and did a camp in Kansas City, but that was all. We didn't expand, just kept it up there,
Oh, you're just up there, okay.
Yeah, we didn't.
But it originally, did it have a little tie to the National Development Program?
No.
Where that's originally where it was going to maybe start from?
It was totally independent, became a business.
Okay.
Yeah, and the competition for teachers, everybody was building rinks around the country, and the high school coaches, what have you, had to serve those clinics. So it became a problem getting the quality of coaches that we wanted. So we decided it was time to move on. I had other business ventures, and the Bemidji University wanted a bigger piece of the pie, so we said, that's it.
Yeah.
But it was
I remember
33,000 kids went through that camp. 33 years or 1,000 kids a year or so. That's an unknown fact. I'm glad you asked about that. I forgot about it.
Yeah, no, pretty cool, because I was up there, and it's a beautiful campus, what you had going on, and stayed at your lake place. That was awesome. So one thing that I think came to you and I later in life after our kids, because you had 3 boys, I had 2 boys, is the girls hockey, because you had some granddaughters that went on with Kendall and Taylor to play college hockey. And me, what I do, I started primarily training male players, and now it's completely flipped since my boys are at college and pro level, where I train more girls now than I do boys. The one fact that I found out, I believe from your brother, Bob May was the pioneer, I believe, in Minnesota here for girls hockey, but you also were one of the first to have a girls hockey camp, if not the first, up in Bemidji years ago.
Yeah, we had one session. We'd have 11 sessions a week, a summer, and we dedicated one to women. And I think a lot of some of the gals that came out of that first camp went on and played on the original Gopher camp, played for Laura Halderson. So, and that's another story. Laurie Halderson asked me if she'd introduced her to Rudy Luther. And I said, because they do so much support. And I said, yes, you come on over to Olympic Hills and I'll set it up. So there was Rudy sitting there with a couple of his cronies, and I brought in Laura, and I said, Rudy, this is Laura Holderson. She's starting the Gopher Women's program at the university. And he asked her a couple of questions. He said, yeah, I'm getting a little heat. I want Minnesota kids only. They want, Rudy looked at her and said, ma'am, no. You go for the best if you want to be successful, regardless of where they're from. So, yeah. That was Laura Holderson. A lot of stories. When you get older, that's the only thing you're good at.
Well, I mean, it's.
I hung up my skates and I hung up my golf club, and I'm afraid now my wife might hide my car keys. So.
Well, it's interesting how a lot of what you said, because it filtered down to me, and when I went through is that when I played for the University of Minnesota, it's been said several times by you and other people, all Minnesota, the vision is to have all Minnesotans. Well, I only played with two people that were not from Minnesota when I was at the University of Minnesota, and that was John Blue, he was from California, and then Steve McSwain from Alaska. But I keep hearing you saying, you can't just stay in Minnesota. We got to have that as the focus, but you got to go where the best players are, because if you want to be the best, you got to have the best there, right?
Yep. So,
all right. One of the most prestigious hockey tournaments that has just concluded, and I got this from your son Dino, the World Junior Hockey Championships. He said, ask him about the history of that tournament and just listen. So that's what I'm doing. What do you know about the World Junior Hockey Championships?
Well, that's probably as good a hockey as I've ever seen. I watched it, the overtime games, and the quality, and it was incredible. Watched it, and that was something that we started back in 1973. That was the first World Junior tournament. It was in Russia. And then we moved the next year to Canada. And USA Hockey was very leery. They weren't that involved. They weren't sure if this thing was a viable tournament. And then all of a sudden they said, maybe there's something there. So they got involved in the third year, and then they took credit for the whole ball of wax. So I said, congratulations to Art Berglund on being the first coach of the manager of the World Junior team. And I said, that's not really true. So don't take away from the players that played on those first two teams, Gary Sargent and Geving and all those kids that played in that first World Junior and second year. And they said, well, we didn't make it official until the third year. So, but Sports Illustrated recognized that as the first World Junior team.
Yeah. Wow. So much history. It's so neat. I mean, I was just a kid under a rock when all this was going on. So It's just neat. So last question before we wrap it up. With all your experiences, what's the one quality, habit, or character trait you're glad you made part of you?
I think this,
from a success standpoint.
I really don't have an answer for that. I don't know. There's so many different things. I think just love and respect your players. Treat them as family. They'll play back. That's Hunter's coaching a team, and I said, give your players all the respect they can and expect it back. If you don't get respect from them, get rid of them. And if you don't respect your players, they'll get rid of you. So that's the key. You got to respect and love the people you're dealing with.
Your son and your daughter took a coaching gig here in Wayzata, Minnesota at the high school girls level for a few years. Did they lean on you a little bit for some coaching advice during that stretch of time?
No, I don't say much. I have some observations. I just go and enjoy watching them. I don't offer anything unless opinions are solicited. So otherwise, I just enjoy watching them, and I get a little upset when they identify me as a pylon in the pond hockey games, and instead of saying "Watch out, Grandpa! Get the hell out of the way! You're interrupting the pond game." So I hung up my skates.
Yeah, well, it's pretty cool to revisit with you all these years later. Thank you for your contribution to the hockey world, not only as a player, a coach, but just being part of that band of hockey gypsies that thought outside the box and really were selfless people who put the growth of the game and the people within it as the highest priority and themselves at the bottom of the totem pole. So thank you, Murray, for taking the time for this conversation and all that you have done to grow and make the game of hockey what it is today.
Thank you very much, Lance. You were a great player, and thank you for what you did for Dean when you were back at the University of Minnesota.
Well, if it was fall down and trip him, I was very good at that, but thank you. Enjoyed the conversation. I'll put the links that you mentioned earlier to the book, The Road to Respectability. I think you mentioned there's a $20 discount going on right now, but I'll put that in the description. And I hope that 2023 is the best one yet for you yet, Mr. Williamson. Thank you for being on the Hockey Journey podcast.
Thanks so much, Lance. You take care and good luck to you and your boys.
Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Well, that concludes another episode of the Hockey Journey podcast. I can't thank you enough for stopping by and listening. I hope you enjoyed the Murray Williamson Hockey Journey. If you think there's someone in your circle of family and friends that might like this episode as well, please share it with just one person. It will really help me in growing this hockey community. Again, I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, or submit a review. I hope to see you back here soon, and do me a favor, make someone close to you smile today. All the best, my friends.